I was 27 years old when I had my first transplant.
Wow.
And I told my mom I'm going to be 36 when I get the second one.
Wow.
I know it. It's going to happen.
And it did.
And it did. So, there was an interview with one of the researchers at Mayo, and he said really PSC is one of the last liver diseases left that doesn't have a cure. Because transplant isn't a cure. It's just a Band-Aid, and you're trading one disease for another with a life of immunosuppression. And so he said that, just kind of a renewed interest in figuring this sucker out.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
which is good for us because we're such an orphan disease. It doesn't affect many people. It's very rare, even rare that it comes back the second time. But mine did. I was able to have.
So you went through. So tell me about that first
transplant.
Yes.
That night, I told Brad. I said, I have a feeling I'm going to get bad news tomorrow because they were redoing brushings to stage cancer, see if it's progressing. I said, I just have this gut feeling I'm getting bad news tomorrow. I said, if this comes back bad, I want off the list. I want to come home and I want to die in my own bed surrounded by my family. I do not want to be in a hospital. We prayed about it. We felt at peace with that decision. He went home to sleep. I stayed in the hospital and just kind of felt at peace the rest of the night. The next morning, the fellow who was working with my hepatologist came in and said, okay, it's like 5:30 in the morning. I have good news and bad news. What do you want first? I said, I want the bad news. Your brushings look worse. You want the good news? I said, sure. It's like, we have a liver for you today. And it's a DCD donor, a donation after a cardiac death. So the person isn't brain dead, but they are... they pull the plug. They're being kept alive with machines, but their brain is still functioning. So what they do is they take the machines off if they have to die within a certain time period on their own. If it extends beyond that time period, the organs you cannot transplant because there's too high of a risk for ischemia and necrosis and that sort of thing. Well, so when they do get the organ, it has to happen fast. Like you have a 4-hour window from procurement to transplant. And so I was like, okay, I gotta call Brad, I gotta call my parents, and I'm on the phone. Brad's not answering his phone, my parents aren't answering the phone. I'm like, I'm gonna go into surgery, nobody's gonna know. And then I'm gonna die, and it's gonna be like I never got to say goodbye. Brad finally answers, and he's like, I'm on my way, I was in the shower, I'm so sorry. I'm like, that's okay, get clean. And so he races there just in the nick of time to see me go down. And I was so afraid. I was just so scared. And, I woke up in the ICU. And they have these bright lights in the ICU. Like those fluorescent lights. And then my mom had made it there in the meantime. And she had this calming music channel on that was like heavenly music. I didn't have my glasses on. So I'm like, and I was high on pain medication. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I hear angels and it's really bright and white. And then all of a sudden I see Brad's blurry face come across and he's all got all this stubble because he's not shaved in several days out of stress. And I'm like, Jesus, you look just like my husband. And he's like, Teresa, it's Brad. Are you awake? And I was like, oh, you. And at a year, Brad and I asked, can we have a child? I was doing good. They said, absolutely, go for it. We've had miscarriages before. We got pregnant on the first try. And we joked because it happened in Washington, D.C., and we were visiting my sister. And we were in her room, so we jokingly called her bed the baby maker. And she's single, and she's like, she got rid of that bed, like right away, and bought a new mattress. And she's like, I have faith that God is going to bring me this child. I wouldn't get pregnant in the first place if this wasn't meant to be. And so right around 35 weeks, we planned the C-section for April 27th. It was looking like the week before they might have to take him, but things resolved. And he was born 5 weeks early. He was 6 pounds 15 ounces. So almost
for 5 weeks.
Almost 7
huge
pounds.
baby if you
19 3/4 inches long.
Wow.
And strong as an ox. And then when he's 5 months, I have a major seizure. I don't know why. They still don't know why. I was unconscious for 4 days. Brad had to take him and send me off on the jet to Mayo Clinic, not knowing if I was going to live. I finally did come to, and they still don't know why I had that seizure. And then I was starting to develop the liver issues all over again. And this was like within 2 years. So Liam's just little. And I'm like, what is going on?
I was going to ask, did it feel differently this time because you were a mom?
Yes. It made me afraid. I was very much led by fear because I was like, I can't leave these 2 boys alone. They need me. And I'm not ready to let go of them. I've waited my whole life for this. And I'm not ready to go.
And how did you do these Mayo trips? Like, do you drive? I mean, how
Drive,
often would
family,
you go for
we'd
a lot of
fly.
time?
I mean, that's probably why we're in so much debt, medical debt, travel debt.
I can't even imagine.
We'll never go on a family vacation unless it's
Yeah.
to Mayo Clinic. It's just the way it is.
Some
You know.
vacation.
But yeah, but that's fine. I have my life. I have my boys. I have God in my life. I have a family. I don't need things when I have that, and what kept me sane is just having a sense of humor, and just making that vow to myself to just turn any negative into a positive, because there's just no other way to get through this any other way. So I have to go to Mayo. I'm getting listed, and they said, well, we can't list you yet because you have these lymph nodes in your belly that are huge. I'm like, what? There's a cancer you can get from all the immunosuppression called PTLD, post-transplant lymphoproliferative disorder. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, really?
You guys are making stuff up at this
I need
point.
a lottery ticket. Like, seriously, because this is so
What are
rare.
the odds? Yeah.
And they thought for a while that's what I had, but they also thought if we can get you off of some of this immunosuppression and lower it, it should be okay to get you on transplant. And so they did that. They saw a reduction of the size. They went in and they tested the lymph nodes through a procedure, an invasive procedure, and then they came back negative for PTLD. I was like, thank you, Jesus. And so I was listed in November of 2016. And so we waited and waited. We had bags packed, ready to go at a moment's notice. Because if it was anything like the last transplant, if it was a decent 4 hours, we're in Kansas. So we wouldn't make any moves until I was at least in the top 3. And then in January of 2017, I don't know if you guys remember the accident on 470 where a Honda Pilot hit a patrol car that was pulling over another car. It flipped over. It closed all of 470 for hours.
I don't remember right
Hours.
Yeah.
I have pictures. I shouldn't have survived.
So which car were you in?
I was the Honda Pilot.
Okay.
I had what was called hepatic encephalopathy. And that's something that develops as your liver fails. You get a buildup of pneumonia, or ammonia, not pneumonia, pneumonia, in the blood. And then it causes you to lose consciousness, eventually slipping into a coma. Of those who slip into a coma, only 20% of people wake up. And I was slipping, and I was driving, and I probably shouldn't have, but I had to get my son to school. I had to be a mom. I couldn't rely on Brad to do everything. We needed an income. I couldn't work. It was tough. We had to survive somehow. I'm upside down in the car. I was going 55 miles an hour. It flipped in the air. I landed, slid 20 feet. I shouldn't have survived.
Oh my God.
The officer who investigated it, they have cameras in the front and back of a patrol car. is the car's coming at full speed. You don't even see me in the car. As it flips over, you still don't see me in the car. It lands, you still don't see me in the car. Then all of a sudden it like goes white, and then I'm there. How am I here? How am I here? And the lady who pulled me out, they thought I was dead. Jamie Hornbacher stopped in the middle of oncoming traffic and went out there. She saw a car seat in my car and thought, oh my God.
Right.
And I was so yellow. And she pulled me out. I was able to tell her no. I dropped my son off at school. I'd had a doctor's appointment, got groceries, and I was on my way home. Wasn't on my cell phone. Hadn't had any pain medication. I mean, I was legit. I was good. I just suddenly lost consciousness. And then we go through December, and my encephalopathy was getting worse and worse. I was sleeping probably 22 hours a day. I mean, I was slipping. My legs were swelling. My kidneys had failed. My lungs were full of fluid. I was dying. I was actively dying a slow, agonizing death. And my legs were so itchy and sore that I had wounds just exploding. I mean, I called my sheets the Shroud of Turin because I would wake up and just blood. You could see the outline of my body from the blood that oozed all night.
Was there a feeling of saying goodbye to everyone at that time period?
Definitely. Every time I saw a person, I kind of knew this is going to be the last time. And I was okay with that because I really had come to this peace. A peace that passes all understanding, that I'd lived, I'd survived, but it was my time. Liam was old enough that I think he and Brad would be okay. I had a really loving and supportive family that I know would help them. At this point, my brother and his wife were paying for me to be at the Gift of Life house because we had run out of money. My sister had started a what do you call those?
An online fundraiser.
Yeah, that popular one. GoFundMe. And we had raised from total strangers over $20,000, which barely touches the surface of the debt that we have from all of this.
Oh yeah, I can't even.
And so there was just so many people were so generous with their time, with their prayers, with helping out Brad and Liam, and I mean, I can't even begin to like thank people. I don't even know how I can totally thank them, you know. She said, you need to get that phone. I'm like, it's probably them just telling me to come sign my death certificate, you know. And I'm like,
right, yeah.
And she's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You can't sign your own death certificate if you're dead. And I'm like, yeah, good point. I better answer it. So I answered it, and there's this cute little... She's from the South. Her name is Loretta Lynn Joplin. I mean, how southern does that get? And she's a hepatology doctor, PhD fellow. And she's like, well, Mrs. Hoff, we have a liver for your consideration. And this is Oscar season, right? So, you know, when they present, they're like, for your consideration. I was crabby. I didn't feel well. I wasn't ready. I was already dead. I was not going to deal with this. And so I said... what is this, the goddamn Oscars? Tell me about the liver. You know, because she was so hesitant. I'm like, there's something wrong.
Right.
There's something wrong with this liver, and they're just scraping, they're scrambling. She's like, well, Mrs. Hoff, this liver is coming from a 40 to 50-year-old man, and he has syphilis, and a clotting disorder, that could be genetic, so you would inherit this disorder as well. And I'm like, so you want to take out my crap liver and put Hanky the Christmas poop inside of me? And she's like, well, it would buy you time. And I'm like, well, let me call my husband, because I'm not bringing this dude's girlfriends home with me to my husband. So I call Brad. I'm like in tears. I said, I don't know what to do. You know, do I take this and then risk that they won't even put me back on the list because I have one at least, but then go through this all over again? You know, I'd already been cut through this incision once for the transplant, second time for the Roux-en-Y revision. This would be my third time. I'm like, how many times am I going to have to go through this? And he said, you know what? We've made it this far. Let's just take it and get you some time. We'll get you relisted. I promise you, I will spend my dying breath getting you back on that list for a better liver. And I was like, okay. No sooner had I hung up the phone, the chief surgeon calls me. And he said, Teresa, and his voice is very shaky. He's like, you don't have long to live. If you do not take this liver, you aren't going to be alive for me to offer you another one. And so they finally take me back, and I looked at my surgeon and I said, I want you to know that you need to save my life. My son's out there, my mom and my husband and one of my best friends who also has PSC and had a traumatic liver transplant experience, also from Montana. And if I die, I don't know that you're going to be able to go out there and tell them that. So they're praying for me, and I have a huge warrior of prayer warriors, or a huge army of prayer warriors. But they're praying even harder for you and everyone in this room, because you guys need to save my life, you know. And he just said he had to turn away. He couldn't face me. And I get it, you know. And then I'm sitting there regretting, what did I do? Now he's going to be like, ah, while he's operating, you know. I just screwed myself over with that comment, you know. I can't help but relate to the number 3. This was the 3rd time I was cut through this incision. This incision is 3 lines that come together at the center, right next to your heart. Jesus fell from the cross 3 times. He was 33 years old and was on the cross for 3 hours. You can't tell me that's a coincidence. It's the Trinity. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and they were keeping me alive. And after surgery, the surgeon went out and said, we may have to go back in. She's still bleeding. 30 minutes later, bleeding stopped on its own. I woke up from surgery 3 hours after they closed me in the ICU. 12 hours after surgery, a number divisible by 3, I was up and walking a mile around the nurse's station. I had no pain. I didn't need any help to support me. Brad was so worried. I mean, there's a picture of us walking around there. I'm holding Liam's hand, drinking a smoothie, and pushing my IV pole, and Brad's behind there like, good God, don't fall. Do not fall. And I'm just like, psh, whatever.
Tell me, I mean, I know obviously beautiful, wonderful news and a miracle, but such a huge shift. I mean, you were at this point in your life where you had kind of accepted that you were going to die, that you had no future. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of work your way mentally and emotionally through that?
Through my faith. I mean, like I said, when it all started, when I made that promise to myself that I wasn't going to view this as a disability, this as an opportunity to be an example, to use my suffering as an example for others on how to deal with it. Because my suffering, through my faith, I believe my suffering is nothing compared to the suffering that Jesus had and went through. Because he knows all of our sins before we commit them. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine knowing that. Mm-hmm. And that's, why he did what he did and why God did what he did, so that we would have an example. And so I feel like these things all had to happen to get through my thick human skull what faith is. Mm-hmm. And now that I get it, I feel more alive than I've ever been in my entire life. I feel like the song, it's, these scars happen for a reason. They remind me, but they also are a sign of what God's mercy that he has for us. Even though we're suffering, it's usually for a reason, and it's usually to help us return back. Mm-hmm. And the more people that I can share that with, I feel like the better society will be. There'll be so much more respect for life, for each other. It's just opened my eyes to so many things that I was so blind to my whole life because I was too focused on me.